Hey, welcome back to the show. Thank you for joining. My name is Dan Hafner. Super excited to be back this week for the show. Just a quick note for those of you. I actually didn't get a chance to film anything like this. I wanted to come on and say sorry that I'm not doing a show. If you watched the show last week, it was just a recording of a previous interview I did a long time ago. I was so incredibly sick last week that I literally could not talk. And I'm still kind of recovering from it. So excuse me if I have to cough or anything like that. But I wanted to come on and just say like, hey, here's a recording of this that I did. I couldn't even do that. So I just did the recording. Sorry about that. And that's why that's why there was just that out there. So anyway, just wanted to briefly say that. So welcome back. This is officially episode 4, I believe, but we're going to call it 3 since last week was kind of just a filler. So this is going to be a really, really interesting show because we are going to talk about AI. That's right. What is the deal with AI? Now, we're going to talk about a lot of different things, a lot of different topics, have a lot of different cool things included for you in this show. But before I get to that, I just want to do a quick cross promotion of another show here on the E360 network, specifically on inside of Achieve TV. So I'll be right back after this.
Hi, I'm Julianne Meyer, the host of Own Your Wellness, and you can watch my show on Mondays and Thursdays from 4 to 5 p.m. Pacific on Achieve TV right here on E360 TV. Remember, there's more to health and wellness than broccoli and burpees.
All right, welcome back. So we are going to dive into AI. Now, this has been a very interesting year. At the time I'm recording this, late 2023. It has been a very interesting year, and that's in large part thanks to the advent earlier this year of the app I'm sure you have heard of, everyone in the world has heard of, probably at this point. If you don't, you live under a rock. Chat GPT, right? That is kind of the one that has kind of taken the world by storm, set all kinds of different records, has changed and upended a lot of different things. So I'll talk a little bit more about that. But we're going to talk about a lot of different things, the evolution of AI, how it's gone in 2023, the impact that it's having on employment and different industries and sectors, maybe on inside of your individual job or business. Would like to talk a little bit about AI in healthcare. That's actually kind of a topic that's a little bit interesting and near and dear to me, being that my wife is in the healthcare field. There's also some really interesting things inside of entertainment and media, some ethical and regulation type of conversations. And then, where is the future of AI? Where is this going? What are some of the hopes that we have for this type of technology? What are some of the fears? What are some of the things that are actually going on? Probably going to bring in some additional people here eventually, not inside of this episode, but the search is kind of on right now to bring in some additional experts and additional people to talk about the world of AI as we go along inside of this. So maybe on a future episode, we'll have that. But for right now, you're just stuck with me, and it's going to be very, very interesting. So I'm going to dive into the very first topic here, the evolution of AI in 2023. So as I mentioned a second ago, the proliferation of ChatGPT earlier this year in 2023 was truly something to behold. I believe it set the all-time record for the fastest growing app, the fastest to 100 million users or something like that. It was absolutely nuts. It blew other apps out of the water, like previous ones like Facebook, TikTok, of the fastest adoption level. And I remember when it came out, I remember, you probably have your own kind of story of remember. It's almost like, we all kind of remember when big world events happen. Like you kind of remember where you were for things, like whether they're, big news events, or usually we remember them by bad events like 9/11 or assassinations or things like that. COVID, those types of things. I kind of remember like when the beginning of, the COVID pandemic hit and kind of how things went day by day and how fast everything changed. The same thing happened with ChatGPT. It was like, these several days when you started to see this thing just went everywhere. It was nuts. You saw so much adoption, and it was like this big coming out party, because we started to learn later on in 2023 here that this actually isn't really a new technology. There's other apps, there's other pieces of software out there that are utilizing ChatGPT and have been behind the scenes for a long time, but we just didn't know it. Like one of the very common ones was Jasper. If anyone knew about that, that was basically a software platform that allowed you to come up with all kinds of content, copywriting software, or content, like social media posts or sales page stuff or emails or those types of things. You would just put in your information and it would spit this stuff out. Um, Little did we know that they had actually paid OpenAI, the parent company of ChatGPT, a ton of money to be able to license that before it was publicly released. I mean, that's like a whole case study in and of itself of how to recognize the power of technology before it is publicly available and capitalize on it. So it's crazy because I mean that's one of the cool things that has actually um, become like a big thing with Chat GPT, especially with like OpenAI and this different stuff that they have. And that's one of the genius pieces behind that whole software is that they built it so you can build tools on top of it. Like that's what I think a lot of people don't realize. Yes, it's an awesome language tool. It's an awesome thing for being able to ask it questions, do all kinds of different things. The other day, actually, I know like now with ChatGPT 4, they have the ability to access the internet. And now there's an actual cool thing. If you have the subscription model to it, you can actually do voice. You can talk to this stupid thing. Like you can actually have a full-fledged conversation. It responds with you. It's not like a super robotic type of tone either. It's like an actual interestingly like diverse sounding voice that sounds real. So it's really, really cool. And it's just amazing how fast this stuff has iterated and how, excuse me, how it's just how crazy how fast it's been able to go. And now you see all of these different tools that are out there. You might see, a lot of AI based tools like Mid Journey. There's all kinds of different sub ones now that are coming out that are using OpenAI's API to actually create software. And that's what's really cool. That's one thing we're diving into here inside of my app development agency is how do we leverage those types of things to be able to include AI in specifically in no code apps, which is really, really interesting and fascinating at the same time because you're able to just create something that's absolutely nuts. So there's one example of a software that I didn't build it, but I've purchased it and I've used it, and it's really, really amazing. It's called AI Staffs, and it's basically a conglomeration. They took ChatGPT and what they did was they made it so that you can have specific people that are, it's like your marketing director or your advertising director or a therapist or a lead generation specialist or a digital marketing guru. And you're able to ask them specific questions. And because what they did was they prompt engineered all this stuff and then built it and packaged it together as a sellable product, right? So it's actually crazy. Like you can go into a lead generation specialist chatbot, for example. It's all powered by ChatGPT. And you can ask it like a lead generation specialist. You say like, hey, how can I improve my sales process? It'll actually say like, hey, I'm not specifically specialized inside of this. You might want to ask the sales specialist person inside of here. Like it's ridiculous. It's absolutely incredible. And what's even crazier is that I think it's really kind of almost at the beginning stages of things. Like I'll be really interested to see where all of this goes 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now. Because again, artificial intelligence inside of just what I'm talking about with ChatGPT, that's just one aspect of artificial intelligence. There's obviously, way more cool advanced things you could be talking about when even military technology or physical space technology. We're just talking about language models, right? And to see how fascinating those are, it's amazing when you talk about additional AI, which we'll get to here in a couple of different topics. It's just crazy to think that all of this stuff has really been happening behind the scenes for the last 30 to 40 years. It's just now coming to fruition, now coming into the public view. And it's just truly amazing to see that this not only is this stuff possible, but it's just opening up, and that's another like topic of conversation we're going to talk about here is it's opening up all of these industries, opening up all these possibilities, things that didn't even exist. Just like that example I told you about here a second ago of an actual application that rests on their technology, and they built a whole other technology on top of that. Like there's whole industries, whole applications, whole platforms, whole things opening because of the advent and the use of this technology, right? So that's a super positive thing. That's additional value creation, that's additional market gain, that's capital gain. That's awesome. That's beautiful things for our society as in any industry, right? But at the same time, you also have this negative side effect of being able to put people out of business, right? When you think about graphic designers, people like myself that are even software developers, um, you know, customer support type of things, like it's finding ways to put businesses or people like that out of business or out of a job because this it's just it's almost like when they what's the word I'm looking for, systematize the automobile creation or building process, right? It's like, hey, a robot can do this, and we don't have to. We just pay $100,000 to build a robot, and then we don't have to pay this guy $30,000 a year. Or after 3 years, it's paid for itself, and now we don't pay this thing anything else, right? It's like it's almost the same thing, and I don't think that'll ever really end. I think there's always going to be um, people who are put out of work by new technology. That's not a thing. Like that's been happening for the whole history of human existence, right? Like the invention of the tractor put a lot of horses out of work, right? In terms of plowing. Now, there's still people that use horses to plow and all that different stuff. But you see where I'm going with this is like there's positive stuff to this, and there's also negative stuff to it. And it's really interesting because there's a lot of different dynamics, a lot of different industries that are affected in a lot of different ways. And I mean, take someone like myself, for example, who's a software developer, specifically a no-code software developer, doing these types of things. How do you now compete with a chatbot that can write code, that can build entire applications for yourself, right? Like people don't technically need to hire someone like me anymore. Is that true? No, I don't think it is, right? Think about a graphic designer, think about whatever, because you can still learn as that person how to leverage technology to speed up your process, to speed up your service, right? There's a ton of people who come to me and clients that I work with who want websites built or landing pages or email marketing pieces or small pieces of technology, right? What I've now learned and how to master to do is how to use tools like ChatGPT, how to use tools like AI Staffs or Midjourney or all these different AI tools that are popping up to now go back and they say, hey, I need this. Can you have any ideas for this for me? Boom, I go over here, I get this done. I can now get things done 10 times, 100 times faster than it used to take me because of you learning how to implement and use and leverage AI, right? I think that's where a lot of people go. And once that clicks in your brain, you're like, oh, I see where this is going now. Because now, instead of being scared of the technology that could possibly put me out of work or replace me, I'm now becoming better at using the actual tool to speed up my processes so I can still go out and market the additional things that I'm doing in a better and more streamlined way. It's funny because I was actually working with one of my clients here a couple of months ago, and she was talking about, some email sequencing or some sales sequencing or some things she wanted to string together. And I was like, you should type that into ChatGPT. I'll bet you you don't even need me. Like you could just do that. And she didn't even know what it was. Like she didn't even have any idea what ChatGPT was. And I was like, see, so there is opportunity out there for people who can learn these things and leverage these things in ways that are useful, right? So there's a lot of cool things. So that actually leads me into the next segment here of the impact of AI on employment. It looks like some of the biggest sectors that are seeing job growth versus the ones that are at risk. So some of the biggest sectors that are seeing job growth with relation to AI and its advent into the industry are tech and software development, shocker there, healthcare, finance, education, energy, and transportation. So those are the industries that are seeing the biggest levels of growth, which is actually really interesting. when you think about things like energy and transportation. Now, some of the jobs that are most at risk due to the advent of AI, manufacturing, right? Robotics, those types of things. Retail, which is very interesting. Customer service, as I mentioned earlier. Transportation, which is also interesting because it's in both lists. Finance and agriculture, right? Think about finance. They think about the ability to create AI-based investing platforms or advice platforms, all those different things. I mean, it really does become very, very interesting when you think about that game. Excuse me, I still have some stuff in my throat from this sickness. So it's really, really interesting, right? Like there are one of these skills that's becoming more and more in demand, and I think, and at least is my prediction here, over the next 10 to 20 years is going to be skills inside of the AI world. There's actually already master classes and boot camps and additional schools that are popping up that are teaching people these skills, and how to build AI tools, how to build those types of technologies, or these tools inside of coding of how to actually build these types of things. It's a couple of things I'm looking into joining as well. But another thing to really think about too is there might actually be high level, even C-suite roles for these inside of companies or associations at some point, right? There might be even a head AI officer, like there's a chief technology officer or a chief operating officer. There might even be a role in the future for a chief AI officer, which is really interesting when you think about like, okay, what type of things would that person be required to do? Would they need to be up on all the latest innovations of AI? How is AI actually working to streamline their business, to make them more efficient, to cut out different, additional things in the business that aren't serving it or not serving the client in proper ways? That's a super interesting idea of a chief AI officer inside of a business, or a large C-suite type of business. That's actually a really, really interesting idea, and something that might come to fruition at some point down the road. So that's a very interesting idea to think about. So, all right, all you digital dynamos and screen-bound entrepreneurs, have you ever found yourself endlessly scrolling, hunting for the perfect tool for your online empire, only to end up with another cat video? Not that I'm judging. Feast your eyes and your business on a really cool marketplace called AppSumo. No, it's not the latest sushi sensation, but it is the digital marketplace where entrepreneurs and online marketers find mouth-watering deals on software. It's kind of like a buffet, but without the risk of overeating or food poisoning, for that matter. From productivity tools to plugins that'll make your website shine brighter than a disco ball, AppSumo's got the deals that make your wallet and your webmaster equally happy. So why waste another minute debating which cat meme best represents your brand? Head over to appsumo.com, and hey, if you still want to watch cat videos afterwards, at least your business will be thriving while you do. Quick note on this: we are launching our own deal and platform on AppSumo very soon, called the App Launch Academy. This is something I've been working on for quite a while here. Recently just finished it up, getting ready to launch it on AppSumo. So I'll have more information on that in the very near future, but you should check out AppSumo. It's really, really cool. It's kind of like crack for entrepreneurs. It's absolutely crazy, but not like the bad kind of crack, like the good kind of stuff. All right. Next segment, AI in healthcare. So this was an interesting topic I wanted to talk about, because again, like I mentioned, I have my wife is in the healthcare field. I've not really learned a lot about what she I don't know if really she uses a lot of different AI things or things inside of her specific role for this, but like inside of the industry at large. It's really interesting when you think about the use of AI, how they're using it now, but also in the future, in terms of things like COVID-19 or future outbreaks or preventing diseases, right? So there's actually this really cool startup called Blue Dot, and it's a Canadian startup. It uses AI to analyze news reports, airline data, and other sources to predict disease outbreaks. And it was among the first to warn the world about COVID-19. So that's a very interesting statement or fact. I hope that's actually true. This was something I just found on an article online. Um, but that's really interesting because again, when you talk about disease outbreaks, airlines, right? This is how a lot of diseases break out. So, what are the types of but it's so interesting that there could be so much information inside of so many different airlines, so many different paths, so many different countries that are people going to and from countries, and whether like what time of year it is, what people's diets are, what their normal immune system, like what's their age, like these AI models that can take all that information and input it to like predict like the percent chance that another COVID-19 outbreak could come, or an Ebola outbreak could come, or something even worse. Um, like that's almost terrifying when you think about it in some facet. Like it's crazy that we as human beings can actually create something like a tool that can do that. I mean, when you really just stop and think about that, um, I mean, that's an absolute insane leap forward in terms of what we can do as a species. I mean, that's absolutely nuts. It's like, I guess it's not quite space travel, but that's absolutely nuts. And then another thing to think about too is, there's actually, what about like inside of medicine and inside of treatments for people, right? There's actually like AI is having a role in speeding up like drug discovery and tailoring treatments to individuals, which is really really interesting. There's this software called, it's actually by Google. Um, it's called AlphaFold, DeepMind's AlphaFold. So Google's DeepMind used its AI system AlphaFold to solve the challenge of protein folding, which I'm not really even sure what that is, but it's a breakthrough that has had major implications in drug discovery and understanding diseases. Again, crazy things to think about. Like how do you even get data into a model that can actually accurately or somewhat accurately predict something like that? That's absolutely crazy. Like, to be able to say, okay, based on me as a Caucasian male in my early 30s that lives in this area, that has this type of diet, that does this level of exercise, or you have this percentage of chance of developing this in the future, or you have this percentage of chance of living to whatever age. There's things you see in the movies that talk about this kind of thing, and you wonder if like they're real. Like I remember there was there was a movie, Don't Look Up. I remember that one about the asteroid that comes to Earth. And in the movie, if you remember, one of the super rich billionaire dude, he had a technology that would basically, it would know exactly when you were going to die and how you were going to die and how old you were going to be and whatever was going to happen, right? And it was just kind of a funny thing in the movie because they talked about like he told the one president, he's like you're going to die of whatever this thing, you're going to be eaten by this, and they're like, what is that? And they don't even know. And then at the end of the movie, you see them do that. It's just kind of a funny thing, but like, this is actually like, what if somebody actually predicted that? And we'll get into this with like ethical concerns and stuff in the future, but like, what if there was a tool that could actually, with relative predictability, predict how old you were gonna live, how you would possibly die, and where you would die, when you would die, how you would die, those types of things. How does it account for terrorist attacks? How does it account for car accidents? How does it account for all that kind of stuff? That's the kind of stuff I want to know. Like that's what's just it really boggles my mind when you think about it, in terms of that, because it's just again what I'm going to search for is somebody to come on this show that knows these types of things, because I really want to know, like, how do you get a model to predict something like that? How do you input data? How do you even begin to input data that can handle something like that? That's what's really interesting to me. So we'll look for someone. If you are listening and you know that stuff, hit me up and let's come on the show. And then finally, a third piece to this is telehealth, right? We might all be familiar, maybe you're not yet, with the concept of telehealth, of doing like a Zoom type of virtual consult with a doctor, things like that. Imagine if AI was able to look at your eye movement patterns, look at your skin tone, the level of your pores being open or closed, be able to read your temperature through a Zoom screen, to be able to possibly predict what might be wrong with you, what might be going on, what type of underlying sickness you might have based on the symptoms you're having, just by looking into a camera like this. I mean, think about something like that. Maybe something like that already exists. I mean, it's pretty crazy to think that that there either are tools or could soon be tools that could predict things like that, and that could do things like that. I mean, just imagine the possibilities, especially like with my wife. She is in the NICU field, right? So premature babies, that type of thing. Imagine being able to go into into a NICU office or an OBGYN office or something like that, and being able to predict, what your future baby might be like. Again, this comes into ethical concerns when it comes into, babies with disabilities or abortions or all those types of things with that, which is just, the whole point of this is just to get your wheels turning of thinking around, okay, just because this technology can exist, should it? And we're going to get more into that with an AI ethical discussion here in a couple of chapters. But it's just crazy, because with all of these things that can exist, should they? Just because we can build a technology, is it useful? Is it not only is it ethical, but is it useful? Is it able to actually solve a problem in a way that isn't just something that's cool and flashy, but actually improves lives or solves real problems for us, not only inside of the business world, but inside of our health, inside of our personal relationships, whatever the case might be. So that's a super interesting concept to think about there. Okay, so we're going to take a quick break here, and we'll be back in about 30 or 40 seconds with the next chapter.
Introducing Launchpad, the perfect partner to help you launch your dream project to the world. We know that time is of the essence, and we're here to help you make the most of it. With Launchpad, you'll get access to the most advanced digital tools and strategies to take your idea from a mere concept to a fully fledged success. Whether you're an aspiring entrepreneur or a seasoned pro, we have everything you need to make your mark in the world. So why wait? It's time to take the leap and make your vision a reality. Launchpad, your ultimate launch partner. Let's make magic together.
All right, welcome back. So before I get into the ethical discussion, I want to talk a little bit about AI and media. So this is pretty interesting. So this kind of goes hand in hand with, excuse me, with the ChatGPT stuff. But when we're talking about this, when we're talking about kind of entertainment, the entertainment industry, the media industry, I mean, AI is being used to create, music, art, even like song scripts, which is actually really, really crazy when you think about it. So there's this company, Jukebox, by OpenAI, which is an AI model capable of generating music, including raw audio in various styles and genres, showcasing the potential of AI in the creative process. Again, I have more to say on that inside of the AI ethical piece, but that's actually nuts. When you think about I'm not a musician, I'm not an artist, I'm not that type of artist anyway. But when you think about someone who's in the songwriting process or being able to do that type of thing, you used to just have to come up with this type of stuff, right? I know there's certain chords, and I'm by no means anywhere know what I'm talking about when it comes to writing songs or music or anything like that. But it's safe to assume that a lot of this was done basically with human help. It was something that would come out of your mind, out of your soul, out of your heart into existence through that human experience of I'm writing something, I'm doing something. It's just like writing on a piece of paper. It's coming from that soul. You might write lyrics to a song, but the ability to carry a beat in your head, to carry a melody in your head, that's a very human-esque existence, right? So the fact that they've actually been able to take that and be able to replicate it inside of a human, like a robotic experience inside of AI, that it can come up with and create new, like, original music and new original lyrics, and things that actually rhyme and speak to, and maybe they don't speak to us at the deepest level, but they actually create things that are interesting to listen to. That's insane. That's absolutely crazy. And a lot of people get it's very interesting when you talk about, like, um how Google and how Bing and how all these types of companies are diving into it, but then they're also tending to, like, penalize AI, systemized results inside of their, like, content that's created via AI is shown below originally created content, which, I don't, how do you know AI knows it's AI? Like, you know what I mean? It's kind of an interesting thing. I'd be interested to learn more about. Um, so is that something that could happen the same way? Like, when you write something with Chat GPT, you say, "Hey, write me this email that does this, 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 and this." If you're not specific enough, it's going to create some. You get in what you put out, or you get out what you put in, right? So it's probably the same thing with music, right? If there's less detail put into these types of things, it's probably not going to create something that's going to be the next top 100 chart hit, right? But if you're specific enough and you can actually use that to get a head start on things, that's where, like, where I tell people, when they use ChatGPT to come up with sales copy, or code, or whatever it might be, it's a great starting point. It can do 95% of the work for you. It's now up to you as the human, as the person interacting with this stuff, kind of going back to what I talked about before, to be able to actually go and improve upon that, to not just take, "Hey, write me this email that does this, 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 this," copy paste, right? Like, yeah, there won't be errors, there won't be a lot of stuff, but will it actually make sense? Will it sound like it's from you? That's hard to do. I mean, there's different things you can, with the AI staffs thing, there was actually a way that you can do that. You can create, and you can train an AI to learn different things, and you can do that with ChatGPT. But it's really interesting inside of that, with being able to create, um, music, right? There might be music that someday makes it to a top chart on iTunes or something like that, and it's not even a real person. Like, it's not real music. It's not a real it's like, nobody actually, like, no band actually sat down and played that. Nobody in a producing studio actually sat down and created it. No singer actually sat down and, like, sang it in a production studio. It's completely AI. Like, how do we deal with this stuff? How do we move? You know what I mean? It's a very, very interesting world that you're living in. And again, we're going to talk about the ethical stuff here in a second. Um, but and then another thing inside of which is, actually, I'm very for, is the use of AI and all the software out there to create personalized recommendations, or those the algorithms, so to speak. I'm a big fan of Spotify. I love Spotify. I know there's others out there like Pandora and iHeartRadio and all these other things. I'm a Spotify guy. That's just how I am. There's all kinds of recommendations. There's all kinds of different things in there. You see more and more of these platforms that are able to actually put content in front of you that you actually like, you want to engage with, and is quality. And they're able to determine that because they have so much history of people who are in your age bracket or listen to things that you listen to, and they have also clicked on these, and it's storing up all this information, and it's fed into an algorithm to say, "Hey, Dan would probably like this." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, that's actually that's a good song that I would listen to. I'm going to add that to my playlist." Right. So I see things like that. I like. I'm a fan of. I'm not someone who's like, "Oh, how do they know that?" Like, I want to be shown those things, because I'm not someone that's going to go into Spotify and search for all kinds of different things. I'm like going to search for a playlist. I'm going to click play. I'll be like, "Yep, that's what I want." Deep focus or whatever, and then click play and then go. I'm not going to go in and search and go down the rabbit hole with things. I like recommendations to be shown to me. I like those types of things to be given to me, because I'm not going to be someone. I have 9 million things to do. I'm not going to go do all of those searching. I might do it every once in a while, but not very often. So I like to be able to be seen and shown recommendations in that type of way. So I'm actually a fan of that, even though there's a little bit of a privacy, succession when it comes to that, or secession. You actually cede a little bit of privacy to say, hey, here's my listen history, here's my click history, here's all this other stuff. In exchange for that, I want you to show me things that I would like to consume, things that I would like to use, right? So there's an interesting dynamic there. But again, yeah, that can infringe on personal privacy if you're not careful. If there's other platforms out there that are using that and abusing that, actually. So that's a very interesting idea to think about. And what was the other piece here? Oh yeah, that was it. So let's talk about the next piece here, which is, let me get this here for you 1 second. Okay, there we go. Wasn't quite prepared for that one. Notice a typo in it before I had to put it up there. So ethical concerns, right? Again, going back to the song example, the healthcare example, you know, where does the world of AI go when there is intrusions on privacy? When these things know us better than we know ourselves? I think some of us are already pretty used to. You say something out loud and then you go on Facebook and you see ads for it and you never saw ads for it ever again, ever before that. And you're like, huh, that's really interesting. There are a lot of ethical concerns when it comes to the topic of AI, not only inside of one industry, but like kind of, globally when it comes to all of this, right? Again, with the healthcare stuff, like if there are, there's PHI to consider, there's HIPAA considerations. Should an AI model know all of my HIPAA information? Should it be able to access that stuff just based on, like, if I just log into a Zoom telehealth meeting and I don't actually provide any kind of consent, or just it scans my face inside of 1 second and then it's done and it's over with and it knows all my stuff. What if I never provided consent for that? That's a huge invasion of privacy. There would need to be some level of, like, before I go on there, I know within 1 second it's going to know all of my medical history and be able to tell me when and where I'm going to die. Like that's a really, really interesting thing. Another ethical concern is, I know, and there was a recent writer's strike in Hollywood and all this different stuff happened. And I think one of the issues of contention there was this topic of AI and how it's going to be used in the future. There was actually a really interesting show my wife and I watched on Netflix. I forget what it was called, but it had to do exactly with that. And it was this show where this girl goes home from work one day and she sees this show on Netflix, and it was like Jane is the Worst or something, and that was her name. And it was basically the show every day was a reenactment of her day. So it like caught her cheating with her boyfriend, doing things at work that she probably shouldn't be doing, all these different things. And her likeness was stolen. And it was like it was this really, really cool show. I really forget what it was called, but it was really interesting, because she realized, like, hey, I never gave permission for this, or I didn't want these things to actually be shown or happen. That's a huge invasion of privacy. There's tools out there that you can create voiceovers for videos with the voice of, like, The Rock or Kevin Hart or Donald Trump or Bill Clinton or whatever, like anyone. And it might not be, like, it's not them actually saying that. Like, you could have, for example, a video that has Donald Trump saying, I think Joe Biden is the greatest, or Joe Biden saying, I think Donald Trump is the greatest, or whatever. And, like, clearly the person didn't say that thing, but now it's in their voice with their usual face. There's also videos or software out there that you could take, someone's likeness and do that too. And then you could paste those things together. And that's what I've always heard of is, there would be wars started over this type of thing where, someday somebody cuts together a video like that, and it's somebody at the podium. It's the president declaring war on some country that they're not even doing. He's walking on the beach somewhere or something like that, and it could actually be seen and taken seriously and cause real world consequences. mean, obviously it's a very far-fetched thing, but maybe it's not a far-fetched thing, you know? Um, so there are um, a lot of things to think about in terms of that. And then what was really interesting, I remember when AI or when ChatGPT first came out here in in early 2023, and there were a lot of people, including Elon Musk and some big names in the industry, that were calling for they said, hey, look, AI needs to be regulated. There needs to be, which is really interesting when you have like even the guy, I think that was the OpenAI CEO, was like, this needs regulated. I mean, anytime the government gets involved in regulating things, like tends to go to crap. That's just kind of a general rule of principle. Like the government always screws things up, at least in my opinion, for these types of things, right? So it's really interesting to hear the people who are actually creating these things saying like, hey, um, yeah, this could get out of hand really quickly. We should possibly have some regulation inside of here. So, what does that look like? What does that look like? Every time you have to use OpenAI for an API thing, you have to use it in certain ways. You have to disclose certain things. You have to. Is there standard operating procedures or standard best practices for that? Um, it's really interesting, and especially inside of regulation. Is there certain tax that applies to that? Certain use cases that are required. It's just a really really interesting rabbit hole that it deserves a lot more discussion in an open discussion by all of us, because it's going to affect all of us at some level, whether it's in our job or our personal life or just even being on social media. That like there's so many different things that will end up being affected by this, and there's just a lot of ethical concerns to think about, and that's just just an ongoing conversation. Okay, so next chapter is the future of AI, hopes and fears. Okay, um, so I think everyone always talks about this this idea that hey, AI is going to one day take over and be smarter than humans. Like that's always the general fear, the general talking point of like, oh my god, AI is going to take over and rule the world one day. I find it really hard to believe that ChatGPT, something that's literally only existent on a computer, would take over the world. That seems highly highly far fetched, just to me, based on things that I see with my own eyes. Um, but then you talk about the idea of, well, we're going to take this language model and we're going to put it inside of these robots of humanoids that are now walking around and being among us, right? There's a really famous old movie called I, Robot, starring Will Smith. If you haven't seen that movie, highly highly recommend it. It talks about this exact thing here, of how there are robots take over. They're designed to be subservient to humans and serve us. And then they're built with laws inside of them that they can never, harm humans. They can never supersede human orders, all these different things. And then one ends up taking that leap and turning that. So then they end up taking over, right? Is that likely? I don't know. I mean, is that possible? Yes, I would say possibly would be, given a highly unfortunate series of events that would happen in a crazy sequence that no one would ever be able to foresee or stop once it was started. Um, I truly don't think that you know we as human beings that are normal and sane, that would that have powerful weapons and governments that would actually not see that coming and be able to put a stop to it before it actually became a real thing. But crazier things have happened. Um, I think that that's a big fear, but I don't think it's a founded fear, to be honest. I just don't believe, especially now in 2023. Ask me in 10 years, ask me in 20 years, what we think of it. We'll see if that actually changes the conversation. But I think the future, what more the future holds, is more hope with AI and humanity, because I really see it being, again, a tool that allows you additional leverage, that actually makes our lives better in a lot of different ways, not only inside of things like business, right? Just for obvious reasons of moving faster, of deeper research, of more predictive outcomes, just all those types of things. But once you also teach a machine to learn from itself, and it has different inputs, and now like ChatGPT can connect to the internet, and get additional information, um, it only grows. It only just allows things to become more robust, more collaborative in a lot of different ways. So I think that there's just a lot of different ways that it's actually more hopeful than fearful in the future. And then there's obviously the idea of you know we as humans, I think we're always searching for meaning in life. We're always searching to be a part of something bigger in our lives. What's the meaning of our lives? What's our purpose here? Does AI have a place in helping us figure that out? I mean, maybe. I don't really know. I mean, again, AI is only as good as the information that it knows and you can give it. And I've never really gone down that rabbit hole with ChatGPT and asked it like, what's the meaning of life? What's the purpose of my life? And all this different stuff. Because again, it doesn't know you. It doesn't. There's still your humanity that has to be dealt with and contended with, because your humanity will never ever be supplanted by any kind of machine or robot. At least not in my lifetime. Maybe in the future, who knows? I still think that there's all kinds of room and room for improvement with our own humanity, with all of the different things that we as humans do, that we as humans think and feel. And there's just no replacing that with machines, in my opinion. Okay, so that's all I have to say about that. We have time for one more chapter here, which I'll get into. But first, so if you are a fellow businessman like me, a father, a husband, we tend to wear these titles as badges of honor. Yet behind the suits and the smiles, many of us grapple with the silent struggle, balancing work, family, our own well-being, our physical health. Does success in business in the boardroom mean sacrifices at home? It shouldn't. Allow me to introduce you to a program I can recommend with the highest level of confidence: Wake Up Warrior. It's a transformative coaching program specifically tailored for married businessmen with children like you and me. It's more than just guidance. It's a call to action, a beckoning to reclaim and harmonize all facets of our lives: body, being, balance, and business. Look, true success isn't just measured by your business accolades, but by the strength of the relationships you cherish, the memories you create, and the legacy you leave. Isn't it time to become the warrior your family needs and the leader your business deserves? Dive deep, confront the challenges, and emerge not just successful, but whole and healed. Visit wakeupwarrior.com to begin your journey, or click the link below in the description. All right, so the last chapter here, while I have a few minutes, I want to talk about AI in education. Again, I mentioned before, we all have to keep learning inside of these tools with AI, and how do we improve, again, taking that different approach of, hey, you know what? I'm going to learn these tools instead of allowing them to replace me. I'm going to become the masters of these tools instead of, subservient to these tools. That's where I'm going to go. And that is, I think, the mindset that we all have to do. But it's really interesting. I'm gonna have a guest on here, actually, one of my clients who gets into this topic a lot deeper than I do. But in terms of software and AI inside of the educational space with the classroom. So how is this affecting kids' abilities to learn? When I was a kid, I wish I had something like ChatGPT or an Alexa to be able to ask questions and do those types of things. Hopefully I didn't turn. Okay, she's good. It's crazy because, like, how do you, when there's so much information at your fingertips, how do you learn? How are you able to turn those things off and still focus on the things that you should be learning and be able to do, and actually move your life forward, right? I mean, you see things like there's this software called the Khan Academy, right? So it's not purely AI driven, But platforms like the Khan Academy use algorithms to provide students with personalized learning paths, which allows them to focus on areas they struggle with and skip over content they've mastered. That's a really, really interesting idea, right? Because it almost becomes the game of specialization early on. You notice one student really struggled, like me. I struggle with math. I still struggle with math in my life. Like I really, really do. I can't do math in my head. I never could. So that would be somewhere where I would need to focus and double down on. But when it comes to things like spelling, language arts, history, those types of things, I learned very, very, very well. I would be able to skip over that content. I've already mastered those types of things, and I could spend more time focusing on those. So that's really interesting. If there was ever any kind of thing where somebody could take test scores, maybe SAT scores or standardized testing scores. Remember, we all have to take those when we were little, and being able to say, okay, here's where you scored on this. Here's how you can do better on this. Your test scores are just one thing. They're just a number. They're an indicator of where you are in that particular topic as it pertains to that test. But then how do you improve that? How do you specifically go down that path of not only improving yourself inside of every area, but that specific area, right? So that's a really interesting idea. In terms of that, there's another app out there called Duolingo, which is a language-based learning app, which uses AI to adapt lessons and exercises to the user's learning pace in areas that need improvement, similar to the Khan Academy. That type of stuff is really, really interesting, really, really worth looking into and considering, because at least with the general population, the general schooling methodology, by and large, in the country, it's very broad, right? And as you go through grade school and high school, and then you go to college for specialization, and then you can go further for specialization. But what if you were able to actually hone in to say, look, I'm really, really good at math, or I'm really, really good at physics, or, like there's almost ways that you could get kids being specialized learners earlier on in life, which might actually give them, perhaps, I don't know, this is just a hypothesis of mine, but maybe that could give them head starts when it comes to different colleges or different admission programs or AP classes or things like that. You might not be so strong in one area, but what if you took all the time and you doubled down on some of the areas that you were actually way, way better at? Just a thought, something to think about, so just a very, very interesting thing to consider there. So got a couple of minutes to spare here at the end. Thank you very much for tuning in to the show, whether you're listening to this on the E360 TV network, on YouTube, maybe LinkedIn, or maybe you're just listening into the podcast. Wherever you are listening to the show, I really, truly appreciate you being here and listening the entire time. If you know someone who would enjoy the show, get value out of it, please feel free to share it with them. Always appreciate any ratings and reviews, whether it's on YouTube or where you're listening to this on your podcasts. Really, really appreciate you coming on. And then if you do want to watch the show, I've always gotten into people listening to podcasts first, and then eventually was like, oh, they actually have a show that's live that I can watch on, an actual visual medium. That's where the show gets really, really exciting. So if you're just listening to the show, you want to watch, you want to see my beautiful bearded face here, join on E360 TV. This is where the show is being hosted and replayed and hosted live and broadcast live. Really want to thank E360 for the opportunity to be here, and Achieve TV as well. You saw the owner of Achieve TV here at the beginning. So she's really, really awesome. I really want to thank Julianne as well. So that is it. That's all I got for you guys this week. Hope you learned something around the topic of AI. Got your wheels turning a little bit. Maybe want to look into things a little bit more. So I really, really appreciate you, and I will see you guys next week.